Now, primary school pupils nationwide are expected back at school on Monday. The South African Democratic Teachers Union in KwaZulu-Natal says it's concerned about the overcrowding in schools. Joining me now is Sadtu KZN Provincial Secretary Nomarashiya Caluza. A very good afternoon to you, ma'am. Now, we have seen the older classes going back to school seemingly quite safely, but you're not convinced that the situations are rife for the primary school learners to go back. Tell us why.
Thank you for having us. Indeed, next week on the 2nd, all primary school learners are expected to come back to school, but informed by our monitoring, the reports that we currently have, they point to a situation where we can confidently declare that thousands and thousands of primary schools in KZN are not ready for that number of learners that will be coming back, mainly because even last year, we indicated as such that there's a problem of floor space in the department in KZN. Majority of our schools here are overcrowded. Hence, the rotational approach which many schools adopted and supported, because if we still have to observe social distancing everywhere in the classroom and outside, there is no way that under the current situation our schools can be able to do that. If the department can allow all learners to come back, it must be known publicly that no school will be observing social distance. And by the way, we have received complaints from school principals and teachers who are indicating their circumstances. Our view as such is that it is only when the Department of Education in the province has intervened through deploying mobile classrooms, which has not happened, unfortunately. And that means today, as it is Friday, school principals and the department must be clear, must send one message, very clear message to parents, so that we don't have learners coming to schools. But secondly, besides the issue of the floor space and the impact of social distancing on that, is the issue of the screeners. You know that it is one of the requirements that there must be the checking of temperatures. Schools, as we speak, are only having one person. The department has promised that they will ensure that at least each school has two, so that they can cope with the bigger numbers that are expected to come back. That has also not happened. The third one is the issue of PPEs that have not been delivered to schools.
Ms. Caluza, on average, how many pupils are there in primary classrooms?
You know, we have schools that have 40, they're ranging between 40 and 50. And in some schools, we do have 60 learners in one classroom. So it tells you that with social distancing that has to be observed, you can't have that number. It's a choir. It's a mass choir that is not needed if we are all committed in observing the protocols that are meant to manage the spread of the virus.
You say that these are conditions that existed pre-COVID-19 and that you've always been wanting additional mobile classrooms. What has the response of the department been regarding this?
You are correct. Even last year, we're very clear that these challenges that we are faced with, the infrastructural challenges, are not new. These are things that the department has been sitting on, even though as labor as such, we've been raising them sharply, that our teachers are faced with a big number of learners in the schools. Last year, the department initially had a plan where it was indicating how many mobile classes will be deployed in each school. But that could not happen for all the schools. But as we speak now, we had a meeting with the department last week where they presented their plan and were clear on the issue of social distancing. And they were more like they will be attending to that. But seemingly, the priority now is with those schools that have been bent down during the unrest. And we are saying those are not the only schools that are in need of mobile classes. But as we're saying, there are districts, for example, that still have a challenge of water, Zululand, Mukhanyakude, and King Cetshwayo. We still have challenges. the high school learners and the primary school learners that came back this week, it is known, the department is aware that there are schools that have not been having water since Monday as they came back. So this is the state of affairs, which we believe that if there is no water, that school cannot be said to be ready, because one of the requirements is that of washing hands regularly. It can't happen in those schools as there is no delivery of water to fill the tanks that are there, and some of the water tanks were stolen, of course.
You mentioned the unrest that was experienced a couple of weeks ago. Now, over 100 schools in KwaZulu-Natal have been destroyed due to this. What impact does this have on the number of mobile units that you are now requesting? What does that take the number up to?
To be precise, we have about 137 schools that were affected. Not all of them, of course, have faced asking, but there are those schools. Indeed, those schools are in need of mobile classes. They are not more than 10 that are in need of mobile classes to replace those classrooms, not attending to the big number in the classrooms, but to replace those classes that were burnt down. Not all those schools have received mobile classes. That is in terms of the report that we have. But the impact of the unrest is such that it is not only on the classrooms, but as well as the school nutrition program. As we speak, learners that are coming to school this week, in some schools that they are not being fed because the school nutrition equipment was stolen, the pots, the stoves, and the food, they were stolen, and the department must move with speed. Unfortunately, in that budget of theirs, which they say it has been cut, they must try to replace these things so that learners do not suffer, and also to ensure that there's effective teaching and learning in each school.
It sounds, from what you're saying, Ms. Caluza, that there's still quite a number of issues that need to be attended to by the department. What has their response been?
Their response, as I said, that last week we had a meeting with the department and other stakeholders. They presented their plan. We did indicate when we're appreciating the fact that we're being informed of what the plans were, but as Sadtu, we were frank to say the plans are convincing on paper. Our interest now is what will be obtaining or is obtaining at the level of the school. It's very clear now that there's a huge gap between the plans on paper and that which is obtaining currently. The issue of the PPEs, as I said, they are not there. They've not been delivered to schools. And many things, the mobile classes and the screeners that they promised to appoint in that report, they're not there. If they are still sticking to that plan, they are still going to employ. They've not employed, they've not secured the mobile classes, they've not sent the PPEs. So that is the situation, which then means majority of schools, including the secondary schools, not primary schools only. On the issue of PPEs, even secondary schools are affected. And there's no direction to say what must schools do in the absence or when they run short of these important PPEs that are required to manage the spread of COVID.
And what has been the vaccination uptake for teachers in KwaZulu-Natal? And what impact is that vaccination of teachers going to have on the safety of not just the teachers, but the learners themselves and, by extension, their families?
Thanks for that. You see, on the vaccination, because remember, it was our call that teachers must be vaccinated. And we want to appreciate that we're listened to, and we want to appreciate the work done by the health providers, especially the nurses, the way they handled the project. We're excited because majority of workers, teachers and education workers in KZN were vaccinated on time. You remember that it started on the 23rd to the 8th, even though we still have those that have not been vaccinated because of their own reasons, and the others because there was a time when the province ran out of the vaccine. But we are far ahead in terms of that. We are less than 5,000, those that have not been vaccinated. But the fact of the matter is that getting a vaccine does not mean that you are now immune from the virus. That is why even if you have vaccinated, you are still required to wear your mask. You are still required to observe social distancing, and you can still catch the virus. You can still pass the virus to other people. So ours is that even though we have been vaccinated, we have to continue with observing all the protocols. But what is more critical is the fact that our learners have not been vaccinated. We can still see the movement of the virus between teachers and learners to teachers, considering that learners are coming from their communities together with their teachers, and not everyone in the community has been vaccinated.
Ms. Caluza, thank you very much for your perspective there. As Sadtu in KwaZulu-Natal, not supportive of the reopening full-time of primary school learners, them attending classes. They say Department of Education has presented the plan to them, but as you've heard, them highlighting a number of issues that they feel still need to be addressed. That's Ms. Nomarashiya Caluza, the Sadtu KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary.